Hello, I hope you're all nicely fed and watered. I'm Orna Ross, for those of you that I haven't yet met, and it's my great pleasure here to chair, very informally chair, this session with two of the foremost creative thinkers in the UK to date. I'm not kidding. Really?
Trade Descriptions Act.
I'm not kidding. So on my left we have Dan Holloway. Take out your medal, please. I have proof. Dan is the...
I'm not going to keep it on, don't worry.
Yes, you are. Creative Mind Sports give me the title. It takes of the world.
Creative Thinking World Champion.
Creative Thinking World Champion. Yeah. Same game some years ago, you won the intellectual world champion, right?
But as I say, my mind's gone down.
The mind's improved enormously since then, expanded and opened out as it does creatively. On my right, we have the Creative Penn, to be found at thecreativepenn.com. This woman 10 years ago was unable to say the words, "I am creative." She has since gone on to become one of the foremost creative entrepreneurs in the publishing arena in the world. And she is an inspiration to everybody who works in indie publishing, writing, and all matters associated with that. This is Joanna Penn. So
I don't have a medal.
No medal. It's not a game to Joanna, it's a financial sport. So I'm going to actually begin there, just asking Joanna to talk to us a little bit about that. 10 years ago, you were unhappy and you decided to change your life, and talk to us a little bit about why you called yourself the Creative Penn.
Yes, so the creative living thing. So 10 years ago, 2006, I was working in Australia at the time. I used to implement accounts payable into large corporates. Yeah, exactly. This guy knows what I'm talking about. I mean, how least creative is that? I mean, it was pretty bad. I was spiritually dead, I was creatively dead, and I couldn't say I am creative out loud. But I wanted to change my life. I was crying at work. I was paid a really good 6-figure salary. I had a house, all the things that people say you should have, and I was miserable. So I started, reading self-help things like you do, and listening to podcasts and things, and I started to hear about these things called affirmations. So if you start to believe something, or you start to say something, and you start to change your mindset, over time you can actually become that thing. So I wrote down, I am creative, I am an author, 10 years ago. And I couldn't say it out loud at first. I would look at it and say it in my head, and when I tried to say it out loud, it just wouldn't work, because I wasn't creative and I wasn't an author. After about 6 months, I started saying it out loud, started writing my first book, published my first book, started writing a novel, and here I am now, 11 years later. I left my job in 2011, I left my job. I'm a multi-6-figure author. I'm a New York Times USA Today bestseller. And this is what I do for my life and my living. My husband left his job a year ago because now the business is doing so well. So for me, and then I started my business, I called it the Creative Penn. My surname is Penn, it's not a pen name. My surname is Penn, P-E-N-N. And I wanted to start a company that incorporated those things. So that's kind of my journey, and the creativity side, it's good to be with these two, because I am focused on making money with my creativity. What I hate is when people say, and I hear people say it to my goddaughter, to my nieces, you can't be a creative. You have to do something else and just do that on the side. And I'm like, no, we are in the most creative time in history, really. There's this renaissance of, look at everyone who's here, it's amazing. We want everybody to express their creativity. And that certainly changed my life. And now it's kind of, I have a podcast, I have a website, I write books trying to help other people create, freedom in their life, both, inside but also outside.
Fantastic, thank you, Joe.
Wonderful.
Dan is going to do a presentation for us in a couple of moments, but first I'd like you to just tell us your creative story and you know, when did you start defining yourself in those terms? Do you define yourself in those terms? Come on now.
What about this? I should be creative.
Yes,
shouldn't
come
I?
on.
Um,
Yeah.
Well, no, I have a really odd story, and which gets me out of telling the truth. Well, no, it is the truth. But it gets me out of in this sort of situation, which is that when I was 6, my mother came home one night and said, "Oh, I ran into someone in the street I didn't know. Someone just came up to me in the street and said, 'Oh, you have a son?' She said, 'Yes.' She said, 'He will make his living with pen and paper.'"
Wow.
And I was like, so she told me this when I was 6, and it's completely random. Obviously, this person had probably gone around to tens of thousands of people and said this. But I sort of just decided that
Somebody who wanted more writers in the world.
yes, evidently someone who wanted more right.
Often creativity is just about that. It is just, you know, you make a decision and that's where you put your focus and you don't deviate right or left. My own personal interest in this whole thing is I'm very interested in the way in which the creative process which we use to make art and books and all of the things that we label creative, the very same process is actually used to make everything in life.
Engineers, scientists,
Breakfast, everything. So, and I like to distinguish between those two things by talking about creatives when we talk about the arts and what we normally think of as being creative, and creativist when we are applying it in our day-to-day life, our relationships, our relationship with money, our relationship with whatever. So, yeah, just before we get you to do your presentation, one more thing. When did you start entering championships and what's that about?
Well, I read an article in the Sunday Times. It was 1997 when the Mind Sports Olympiad started.
Mm-hmm.
And I read an article in the Sunday Times that said there's this thing coming up, it's in the Royal Festival Hall. So I just decided to pitch up, and there's a thing called the World Creative Thinking Championships. And it's basically, they ask you some really bizarre questions. Funnily enough, the 1997, the inaugural World and Creative Thinking Championships, and I won a bronze medal, which was very nice and kept me going. They had a rather prophetic, slightly sinister question, which was, what does an orange have in common with Princess Diana? And this was literally about a week before Paris. So it was one of those sort of things. So.
Hey, all right then. Well, do you want to give us your
Skin.
There were all sorts of answers given that couldn't have been given a week later.
No, absolutely. All right then. Do you want to give us your formal presentation? And
it's not that formal. I'm just going to stand at the pulpit. Thank you, and thank you so much to Debbie for asking me to do this, most of all, because this is so cool. I could, and in a few minutes' time you will wish I had, make this a very short talk. Because there is one thing that will do more to unlock your creativity more than every other technique put together. Stop judging yourself. Stop being afraid of looking an idiot. That's it. Of course, this falls into the category of straightforward advice that is known as simple but not easy. If you want me to say anything more than that, the rest of what I have to say can be filed under some useful footnotes to be referred to once you've got the hang of the biggie. Sadly, for our pathological love of sentiment, but fortunately for anyone who wants to be more creative, contrary to the heart-rending, fist-pumping, misty-eyed and mystical picture painted by the likes of Dead Poets Society, creativity is not a tenderly handled flame of passion or a spark of something divine. It is almost entirely a numbers game. In Originals, his brilliant tour through the inner and outer worlds of the world's most creative and innovative thinkers, Adam Grant tells us that these stars in our cultural firmament have one thing in common. They fail more than other people. And in his 2013 speech to London Book Fair, Neil Gaiman acknowledged this when he said that publishers should try and be like dandelions, casting out 1,000 things in order that just 100 might take seed. Creativity and failure cannot be separated. Brilliant ideas emerge from a primordial soup that is given its potency by sheer weight of numbers. It is a soup of ideas in which most will, and by any definition that considers them in isolation, fail. Yet, seen together, it is precisely the presence of so many failing ideas that enables this soup itself to succeed. Consider the most successful thing ever to have emerged from the creative soup. It's this. That simple formula, which many of you will recognise, expresses Hubble's law. It's used to calculate the velocity at which the universe is expanding. Whether you look out through a radio telescope at the stars, or in through a microscope at the structure of graphene, or around you at the swell of the sea, or the iridescent dance of the bird of paradise, or the endless rippling retreat of the sands, or the smile on a lover's face, every single thing you experience today, or look back across the oceans of time, or forward to the death of the last star, is possible only because of the precise value of the terms of this equation. And it emerged, I feel very guilty in saying, in such a setting, not through divine fiat, but by a weight of numbers so utterly unimaginable it defies metaphor. The theory of the multiverse, brought to us by Hugh Everett, the physicist better known to many as the father of the lead singer of the indie folk rock band Eels, tells us it is sheer processing power that makes the cosmos the greatest innovator there has ever been. It states that every possible universe there could have been has in fact occurred, and an immeasurable number of those where the value of v, velocity, was slightly too high or slightly too low to support the beautiful complexity of our own, have simply collapsed in on themselves or floated away into the infinite wastes. The problem that we have as creatives is that we don't have billions of years or trillions of possible universes to play with. We have a few decades, lives limited by numerous external factors and the strictures of circumstance. We cannot generate all of the ideas and test each one. We cannot run longitudinal experiments on random mutations. There just isn't, as it were, the longitude to do it in. If we as creatives pursued nature's super top optimal strategy of try everything, then there is every possibility we might miss the answer to providing clean, renewable energy to whole nations because we are too busy exploring what might happen in imaginary worlds where at 6:34 p.m. on a wet, grey Tuesday, all of the broccoli becomes James Corden. Even in a field of human endeavour where the numbers game really matters, let's say literature, our place is much more likely to be part of the avalanche of the average and sub-average, certainly in my case, that is the precondition for the few soaring works of originality that occasionally break the surface. Yet it is possible to make a genuine creative difference in our lives. I'm not sure I have an answer for exactly how, but this is the closest I've got. What we need to do is to go back to a cosmological turn of phrase, and I don't know if Bill's here, but I was fascinated to learn of the origin of the word this morning, a Goldilocks zone. And he told us this morning that the character of Goldilocks was invented by the poet Robert Southey. Southey. Where we do just the right amount of failing and just the right amount of succeeding. And I just have a very simple thesis. Creativity occurs at the intersection of deep knowledge and broad knowledge, which might sound esoteric, but the ideas are there in two of the most commonly referenced pieces of self-help you will find. Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hour rule, that to gain true expertise in a field you need to spend 10,000 hours working at it, and Josh Kaufman's complementary rule that you can get pretty good at most things with 20 hours of highly focused study. Deep knowledge of a subject means that you know the workings of the small field in question to the extent that consciously or unconsciously you start to become aware of the flaws and fissures within it, to have a feel for its landscape. But it also means that you know something so well you have internalised all its rules and developed a blindness to fresh perspective. Broad knowledge brings a veracity and enthusiasm and furious connection building that sees everything as new, free from preconception. But it also leaves you navigating in the dark, lacking an atlas of its semi-hidden pathways and pitfalls. It is in the constant change of focus, the zooming in and zooming out of perspective, the bringing of deep knowledge to play on new fields and constant newness on an intimately known terrain, that the possibility of truly meaningful innovation will most likely and most profoundly occur. So now we know where in the creative cosmos to look for our Goldilocks zone. How do we use that information? What are creativity's radio telescope and mass spectrometer? I want to offer two simple techniques that you can practice every day, all based on the notion we have decided to explore that creativity is about bringing existing things and ideas together in fascinating new ways. Simply put, it is collide and elide. And you can tell I'm a poet because I couldn't have things that don't rhyme. For each, what you will need is a list of things. You can add to this list at any time, and you can add anything. Write each thing on a separate card. These cards will become the most important tool you have on your creative journey. For each exercise, you simply need to draw 2 cards and start. The collision method, for want of a better term, works rather like the Large Hadron Collider. Take 2 things, speed them up, smash them into each other, and then look at the resultant mess to see what you've got. Really good exercises for practicing this include taking your 2 things and asking, how is X like Y? How is Princess Diana like an orange? Or how is an X different from a Y? Or what would happen if you crossed X with Y? Eliding is simply one form of colliding, a very basic but fun to practice one. Eliding 2 objects literally means sticking them together by lopping a bit off each and gluing them back. Basically what, in less literary surroundings, we'd call a cut and shut. Mythology uses it a lot. If you think of all those beasts that are half this and half that, such as a griffin, which is half lion, half eagle, or the half man, half centaur, half horse centaur, or the satyr, the harpy, or the mermaid. The general term is a chimera. These days we might think of them as a form of hybrid. Joining 2 things like this is sort of like colliding, only less chaotic. It's more a case of imagine something that had the something of an X and the something of a Y. For example, imagine an object with the wheels of a bicycle and the fur of a dog. A great exercise for practicing this is an elaboration of the previous one. For each object on your list 6 of its specific characteristics, which you can write numbered on your card. Pick your 2 objects. For each object, use a dice to pick one of its characteristics, and then imagine a new thing, one that has each of those characteristics. In what way might this new thing, this chimera object, improve upon the 2 existing things? How might it be able to do stuff that is completely new? These techniques might not seem very useful. Who actually needs to know what, say, a half coffee cup, half spinning jenny would look like, what hidden uses it might have. But that's to miss the key point. Learning to think creatively isn't about usefulness. Usefulness comes later. Usefulness comes when you immerse yourself in your deep knowledge, then go wandering through the varied landscape of your broad knowledge, applying these techniques on every step of the journey like the world's greatest absurd mash-up ninja. Then again, maybe it never comes. It certainly won't come until you've conquered the fundamental art of being okay with making a fool of yourself.
Thank you, Dan. We take a question or 2 if anybody has a question, just at this juncture.
Yes. What happened to the 3rd dimension? So if you have a vertical and a horizontal, that's a wonderful kind of matrix thing. But there is another dimension which will multiply your chance of winning.
In which dimensions have I restricted myself to? I'm trying to...
I don't seem to have one going forward and back.
In terms of the broad and deep. This is simply in terms of the 2 areas of yes, of what we know, I guess. Each of those would have a forward and back dimension, because we have history and we have prediction within each of those things I'm not. Obviously, you could play around any way you wanted, and there are more than 3 dimensions.
Okay, I don't think we're going to have time for that between now and 2:45. And it's fascinating. There is no topic like creativity to give you completely and utterly different perspectives on the same topic, and to sort of bounce off each other in exactly the way that you were talking about in your talk. And Joe, can I ask you to just kind of give your take and perspective on creativity, the creative process, just by way of contrast, and also where it meets Dan?
Yeah, I love Dan. Dan's one of my favourite poets, and he's so smart. I have some bullet points. So for me, I think the biggest thing that I learned when I was not creative, when I was working in accounts payable, was, anyone else working in accounts payable, just checking, was to notice my curiosity. So I think this is the number one thing. To become more creative, which was kind of the theme of this talk, is noticing your curiosity and not being embarrassed about it. So that, being a fool, feeling a fool or whatever. So for me, like, I look like a nice girl, right? Smiley, happy. And if you listen to my podcast, I'm smiley, happy. But my fiction's pretty dark, and I really like graveyards. Who likes graveyards? Okay, you lot, like, you're all my peeps, right? But sometimes people think that's a bit odd. People are like, what? What are you doing? Like in graveyards, that's really odd. Now, I thought that was odd for probably about 5 years until I confessed this in a group and asked that question and realised that there are people in the world who also like graveyards, who will, like, I took my husband on a romantic weekend to Budapest. We went to the mass grave. We went to the torture museum, all this, and I put it all in a book, and and I kill people for fun in my books, and that's how I roll. And so I think understanding that, noticing what makes you interested, and for me it is, graveyards and death and things like that. I write thrillers, and also culture and history and that type of thing, and then leaning into it. I think so often, we're like, oh well, I can't be interested now. I can't write a book about that because that I'm not that type of person. And it's interesting speaking in a church, because a number of the people I know who write, say, erotica or horror, use a pen name because it's not acceptable for them in their faith community or their village to write that type of thing. Actually, I spoke in Shetland, up in North Scotland, same thing there. They can't write under their own name because people in the community might judge them. And if you need to, use a pen name. Like, it's amazingly freeing for people to write under another name. And there's no shame in that, absolutely, But what you have to do is tap into that. So that's the first thing. Notice what you're curious about and write it down. So Dan mentioned cards. I have an iPhone app. I also use journals, but noticing and writing it down is important. The other thing I've got here is trust emergence, which I have on my wall at home. I actually have it, written on the wall. Trust emergence. And what that means is when you go to the page and, to become a writer, or to become a full-time author, if that's your goal, or just to finish a book, you have to go to the blank page at some point. And sometimes it can feel, especially say at the end of a book, or you just feel like your mind is empty, and that's when you want creativity on demand. And to me, that's about trusting emergence. So if you fill your brain with all the stuff in the world that you're interested in, and then you start noticing them, and then you go to the blank page and trust that something will come, and you start writing. That's what I have to go to. Like today, I've managed to write 2 chapters, woohoo, in between things, and that to me is, trusting emergence as it comes. Even secret weapon. I might pull them out in a bit. Is the noise cancelling headphones. I don't know if anyone saw me wearing them. I look like an idiot, but boy, they help my creativity. So that's really something important. So trust emergence. Fill your brain. Notice, then trust emergence, and the other thing is understanding the cycle, understanding how we all feel. So the chronic self-doubt, who feels that? The, oh my goodness, this is not good enough, and then the need to get it out in the world, and then disappointment, creative disappointment. going, oh, okay, so how come I'm not really happy about that? Like, it was weird. Like, I had a goal to hit the New York Times for ages. I hit the New York Times and I was disappointed. I was just like, oh, right, okay. Have you read Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert? Some of you? Really good book. Highly recommend that book. And, you know, Elizabeth Gilbert wrote Eat, Pray, Love. And she hit, you know, made multi-millions, you know, people around the world love that book. And someone said to her, well, Elizabeth, you know, she was about 45 or something, now you've hit the pinnacle of anything you could possibly create. What are you going to do with the rest of your life? And Big Magic is basically about, look, if you hit the top, if you hit number one on Amazon or wherever in your whole life, there's only one way to go. So what we have to keep coming back to is creativity and the next book. So, you know, the writing bug gets us, and that cycle, we all feel that cycle, I think. And if we didn't feel creative disappointment when we finished that book that we're so sick of now, it's done, it's out, okay, good, next. If we weren't disappointed, we'd never create again, right? We just wouldn't, because we would have made something perfect. So we do the best we can, and then we feel that cycle, and then we move on. And what's amazing with creativity, I think, is, and some people criticise the new pulp speed of writing, which is happening a lot in the indie community. Someone was saying that I'm prolific. I don't think I'm that prolific compared to some people. But the faster you let it flow through you, the faster it seems to come. The more you open yourself up to ideas, and that, you know, the more ideas come. And if you can capture those ideas on the page, as we do, as our form of creativity, then more will come. And that's a kind of magic, which is why I think Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert it really explains it well. So those are some of my ideas for creative thinking and, I guess, creative production.
Thank you very much. Can I just get a show of hands as to how many authors we do have in the room? And how many are readers?
Sorry,
I meant readers, but not writers.
Who has not written a book?
Yes, who has, thank you, Joe. Who has not written a book?
Let's define it that way.
And who in the room is interested in the concept of creative living? In other words, bringing more creativity into how you live your life. Okay, lots of people. Okay, great. So it's really interesting in terms of that to think about some of the things that Dan and Joe have been talking about. So being open to failing, trusting emergence, following your curiosity, you know, actively accepting what arrives, all of these kinds of things. We are trained to do the exact opposite in our lives. We're trained to protect ourselves. We're actually trained to block ourselves and to stop our flow and to stay safe and not to budge, not to stick our you know, hands up. And some countries are worse for that than others. And but all Western society is becoming more and more consumerist and less and less creative, except that creativity won't be kept down. It bubbles up. It just can't be, because by definition it is, you know, to be alive is to be creating, either consciously or unconsciously. We're all creating all the time, and everything we have in our lives in this moment is a result of, you know, us, what we have created to date. And the things that we don't like, we have created from some part of our consciousness for whatever set of reasons. There will be a logic underneath that operates through the 7 stages of the creative process that has taken us to here. And the great news is you can change the story. You can change the game. You can change in your life, in your work, in anything. You decide. You're in charge. That's the one thing. You're not completely in charge. Actually, you're kind of a funnel, but you decide where the funnel leads to some degree. You orientate yourself towards where you want it to go. So here you are with these two wonderful people. I'm sure we have lots of questions in the audience, or also interested in your creative stories. Any comment you would like to make about your own perspective on creativity? It's a huge topic. We're not going to, you know, sort it all out this afternoon, but it will be interesting to hear your questions and comments. So, yes.
How do you still the noise of creativity in your head when you've got so many ideas buzzing that you can't actually get on with them because another one will pop up and another one, and how do you sort out all this bzzz that's going on?
I struggle with that immensely, partly because I'm bipolar, so I have enough noise going on as it is, and it can be absolutely paralysing, and that's not very helpful. I know what the answers you're meant to give are, about people who have ideas boxes where you write things down and park them so you can come back to them later. Poetry helps because it's a very short form. Journalism helps because, again, it's very short form. So I guess I find dealing with things in very small, discrete chunks as opposed to taking on big projects when I'm in that sort of a phase.
For me, the answer is meditation. If I don't meditate, the boing, 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 boing. But if I do, there's still ideas, but they kind of line up in a more orderly fashion.
I do the what you should do according to that. I have an app on my phone. It's called Things. It's really awesome because it syncs with my laptop, and I use journals. But mainly, every idea, I've got a little folder called Fiction Ideas. Like, I'll just write things down. There might be colours, quotes, people I see, little things, random. So it's full. And actually, I saw a documentary on Woody Allen. It's what he does on slips of paper. Puts them all in a box and then does pull them out. And then, but what the trust emergence thing, I think, is also important, because I discovered my first book, Stone of Fire, which I wrote 2009 to 2011. I found a journal from 2004 where the idea had emerged when I was in India. I'd written down an idea that I'd completely forgotten I had, but I'd written it down and captured it in a journal, and I've got a lot of journals, and I hadn't looked for it, but it had emerged years later. So that's kind of what I believe is, yes, it's all running around, but I do believe in writing 2 words down. I'm not a poet like these guys, so I just write stuff down and then it will come back up later. And in terms of which project, because I'm also a businesswoman, I do look like I want to write a spiritual memoir. I've travelled a lot and I want to write a spiritual memoir, but I'm not at the point where I can invest the time in that yet. So I channel my creativity into writing thrillers at the moment and keep the other stuff later. So again, you have to think about the whole of your life, what fits in your life now, and just park those things.
And the other thing, I think, is to pick one and finish it.
Finish it.
It can be, and I really, really understand this, that this happens. It can be very tempting when you're getting scared about the end, and it's going to be judged maybe to nip over here and go over to this nice shiny idea that hasn't got anything. Iris Murdoch said every book is the wreck of a perfect idea. And she's so right.
Creative disappointment. That's what
Creative disappointment, exactly. So containers is a really, I think every successful creative uses some form of what Jo was talking about there, her notebooks or her things. Evernote is another one where it's capturing is another key creative skill. That fleeting idea that you have when you wake up in the morning, to get it down somewhere else, park it over there, but today my job is this, I'm actually over here. Yes.
I think I wouldn't necessarily agree with you saying start one and finish it, but get it far enough that you can decide whether to carry on with it or put it somewhere to do again later. I mean, I belong to a number of writing groups, and one of them had a prompt. And when I first joined, I used to look at the prompt. If an idea sprang into my head, I'd write about that, and if it didn't, I didn't. And then I thought, well, I'll try for half an hour to see if I can think of something. And since then, I've written on the prompt every single fortnight for the last 2 years. Nobody else in the group has. And I just decided that kind of, I mean, maybe you decide that you think real fast and you only need to try it for 10 minutes, but set yourself a bit of a timetable and work at it for a little while. And then if it still hasn't come, fine, abandon it, get on with the next one. But I mean, I agree with absolutely what you say about writing things down. I mean, and do something, because standing still just leaves you standing still. I mean, step somewhere. If it feels very dangerous, take small steps. If you're feeling really enthusiastic, take big ones, but do something. And by and large, it pays to have doubts at the beginning and doubts at the end, but not in the middle. When you're in the middle of doing something, do enough that you can then look at it sensibly.
Head down, elbows out, just do it.
Yeah.
was working to that process or left. But the book that I wrote a couple of years ago was an amazing situation in that I would think about it for a couple of weeks. I went away for 48 hours at a time, and it just managed to stream through. I didn't almost have to do it. That was amazing. I can't do it again.
No.
That's
a gift.
It is interesting. There's another great book, obviously we'll read it, it's called Deep Work by Cal Newport. Some of you read that? Brilliant book, and he gives examples of deep work. That's one example, and it may happen to you again, it may not. J.K. Rowling used that technique for the last Harry Potter, versus an example like I write the 2 hours every morning, headphones on. That's another form of deep work. So everyone has their own way, but the point is getting into that, and that's brilliant the way you did it. And what's amazing is everyone does it in a different way. The important thing is getting into that and practicing getting into that state. Really good book though, if you recommend that.
Actually, you couldn't stop it.
I often feel that's the reward for the 3 hard ones that went before.
Yeah, I've never had that.
15 years before, and then you get a little reward, just enough for you to know it can't happen like that, and then you're back to where you were again.
So Joanna, it was a question for you really, about creative disappointment. So you said that that's essential really for you to kind of go on to your next project. So how do you sort of deal, especially when you're sort of at the start of your publishing journey, perhaps with knowing when to kind of let things go and to stop over-editing things?
Oh no, it is a great question, and to be fair, use a professional editor. That is probably my biggest. I've used about 5 professional editors. I actually, controversially, do not believe in writers' groups or writing prompts. I think work on your own book and use a professional who can make your words better. So I would do that. Pay a professional who likes your genre to help you, and then rewrite it, and then get another editor and do that. And once your book is good enough, publish it, and then you will get better. I mean, obviously, I'm on book 26. It's better than book 1, but those are in the past. So do the best you can with a process, and then move on.
I was wondering whether any of you 3 have heard about the Miracle Morning.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you use it or whether you have any specific rituals you do before actually sitting down and writing that make you feel more creative.
I didn't hear
the Miracle Morning. Orna would hate this. I mean, but you have your own version of Miracle Morning. Is 5 minutes on this, 5 minutes on that, 5 minutes on that.
Very structured.
Yeah. Say what your Miracle Morning is.
Well, yeah, I am a huge believer in a morning ritual. I don't think it actually really matters what it could be playing golf, taking up, it could be anything. But what it does is it's your message to yourself that, the creative part of me, the call of the outside world is so strong. Whatever you need to do to kind of bolster the inner self. So for me, it's, pretty conventional kind of stuff. Meditation, free writing, and some form of cardio exercise. And that if I do an hour, sort of 20, or maybe an hour and a half, with those 3 together, then I'm ready, and I know I mean business. But Miracle Morning, 5 minutes?
It's very structured. I just have some coffee and go to the cafe and write.
Whatever
works
floats your boat. But, Hemingway, used to do sharpen 20 pencils. It doesn't really matter what it is. But I think it is good to have something. Twyla Tharp talks about this in her, the choreographer. She's a fantastic book called The Creative Habit. And she talks about a taxi coming to collect her in the morning to bring her to the gym. The ritual, she said, is the taxi. Without that taxi, she wouldn't go to the gym, she wouldn't do her workout, and things just wouldn't happen the way they should for that day. So sometimes it's about making, at a time in my life where I was finding it very difficult to meditate because I was in medical treatment, I actually set up a meditation in the local yoga centre. That I used to open the door and welcome nobody in at 7:30, but I had to be there in order to do that, and it kept me doing what I knew I needed to do. So set up something that kind of makes you do.
Can I give the opposite?
Yes, please, of course.
I can see that's very helpful, but I also think you mustn't believe that it's essential, because life, and a lot of people lead lives where that's not going to happen if you're a full-time carer, if you work 3 jobs, all sorts of reasons, if you work shifts. There are times when you can't do that, and my favourite story is Murakami, who worked in a jazz club, who's now probably one of the best-selling authors in the world. And he literally, the only times he could write were if he could grab 5 minutes between sets, when there were no customers, because they were all doing whatever they were doing. And so that's how he developed his unique style, which is to write these chapters which are tiny. And this is nothing to do with any sort of cultural reasons you might think, or any literary statement. It's entirely because he used to write a chapter in whatever time he had between pouring customers drinks, because that was the only time he had. And I think routine is great, but at the moment you believe that your routine is essential, you're sunk.
I think that's a great place for us to finish. As you can see, the one thing about creativity is, you can come. Everything goes, but do work out what's right for you. Thanks so much for being here.